Welcome back to another episode of Dad Bod Squad. I am here with Robbie Bobby. What's up, dude?
Dude, we are here to tell the listeners what we have coming up. We are here to bring you the best fantasy football personalities from around the NFL to break down each squad for you, the viewers. We want you to win your league, and these are the guests that are going to bring you the insight that no one else will.
So stay tuned. We have 8 of these coming out for you guys, and enjoy the rest of the show. I couldn't hit the end recording button. Good enough.
All right, next up, we have Michael Florio coming on to talk about the Buffalo Bills. You can find him over on Twitter at Michael F. Florio, and he's an analyst for NFL Network, NFL.com Fantasy, and Rotoballer. You can also catch him on Sundays from 5 to 7 p.m. on Sirius XM with Scott Engel as well. And he's got his own Florio's Football Show podcast, wherever you get your pods. This guy's all over the place, doing a ton of great work, and one of our absolute favorites, Florio. What's going on, man? Thank you for stopping by and talking about some Bills with us.
Thank you for having me, both of you, and thank you for that introduction. You did your research and got every place mentioned in there. Kudos to you.
Dude, we had to get ready for you, Florio. We couldn't skimp on the intro on this one.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're talking Bills. First, we're going to go through some of the departures. Tremaine Edmonds, linebacker. Devin Singletary on the running back. Isaiah McKenzie, wide receiver. And Roger Saffold. And then the additions, they added Damian Harris, running back. Dalton Kincaid, drafted first-round tight end in the draft. Deontay Hardy, wide receiver. Leonard Floyd, edge. Cameron Dantzler, cornerback. And Taylor Rapp. So something we'd like to ask all our guests to start with. What are your expectations for this team in the upcoming season?
Super Bowl. Like that might sound crazy to some, but I don't understand why it would not be the goal when you have a top two, I would say, quarterback walking the planet right now. You have your defense that was healthy for all of 0 snaps last season coming back and looking like it could finally be healthy. I think they improved on the offensive line. Look, I loved Tremaine Edmonds and everything that he did for this team, but I don't understand why losing your second best linebacker has people freaking out about the Bills, a team that lost 3 games by combined 8 points last year.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Florio, you hit it there. I think it's Super Bowl or bust for this team. It has to be, right? Like,
Absolutely.
We've seen how they've been the last 3 seasons. They can get there. They just have to get past Patty Mahomes and now Joe Burrow. Like, that's the gauntlet they got to get through. But let's start with that man who is the head of this ship, Josh Allen. He's a fantasy stud. We know this. He's finished with at least 24 points per game in each of the last 3 seasons. He's been QB3, QB1 in those years. Is there any reason to expect anything different this season?
No. In fact, he is once again my QB1 for fantasy football. I think if you have any concern with him, it's if he's going to run the ball less. And I know the Bills are emphasizing that they want that to be something that he focuses on this year. And I do think it's possible that we see fewer designed runs, but Josh Allen taking that out of his game, especially when you hear him talk and he says stuff like, I'm not a quarterback, I'm a football player and stuff like that. I don't think he is going to completely remove that out of his game in one off season. So maybe he rushes a little bit less, but he was the QB1 for 2 straight years, and then he was the QB1 for the first half of last season. In fact, he was running away with it at that point.
Yeah.
And then he hurt his elbow, and he was not the same guy. Like, as much as I was still going to bat for my guy, yeah, he was not playing at the same level, especially on the deep ball. Like, it decreased the efficiency dramatically. So I see lots of reasons why Josh, like, in his last 2.5 healthy seasons, he has been the best fantasy quarterback. So I'm going to continue to rank him as such, even though I don't think there's a wrong answer between the top 3. But for me, I think he is the best bet for fantasy football purposes.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And you did bring up that elbow injury that he got last season. You said he didn't come back the same. I think we all saw it. There were some issues with that deep ball. Are there any rumblings coming out of Buffalo with the elbow? Like, do you anticipate that kind of being a lingering thing moving throughout his career? Or is that just kind of a set and forget? Like, we don't have to worry about it anymore.
I remember when it happening, they were saying that he just needed rest for it to heal up. And then there's been not that I've heard any rumblings about it, and from what the receivers have said and the videos I've seen, it seems like his elbow, like his placement is on par with what he normally is right now. So I haven't heard anything about the elbow, and unless they're keeping everything very under wraps, that to me that means I don't think it's something we need to worry about.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I'm definitely in agreement with you there. Moving over to the pass catching group, obviously it starts and ends with stud wide receiver Stephon Diggs. So there was a little bit of off-season drama surrounding Diggs. Do you have any concern with that? And if not, where is he in your rankings?
I have zero concern with that. I even at the time last season when it happened, I was kind of on the side of Stephon Diggs because I was like, look, the Bills, I understand they went out and they laid a huge dud. I get that in the playoff game. But Diggs was upset with that. And my mindset is the minute you become okay losing, that becomes your mentality. So I think Diggs could have went about it in much better ways, handled it maybe less emphatically, maybe more where cameras are in play and stuff like that. But yeah, but I have no problem with one of the fiercest competitors being a fierce competitor. So I'm not worried about it. And even in the story that came out this preseason, McDermott said he misspoke and stuff, and Diggs was there. So I'm sure maybe there were some issues there, and Diggs was probably saying, like, throw me the ball even when teams double team me, like, you got away from me in the second half. But I was saying the same thing watching the game. So if anything, again, I am on Team Diggs here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, dude. Like every time, I think a lot of these like supposed diva wide receivers get a bad rap. They're just, to me, they're fierce competitors. They want the ball. I mean, I want a guy on my team that wants the ball. So like, if the guy doesn't go out there and demand the ball like that, I mean, then I have more concern than what if it's the other way around. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. We're looking at Gabe Davis. He's been a polarizing player among fantasy managers. Does he have another level to his game, or do you kind of feel like he is what he is at this point?
I think he is what he is at this point, but that doesn't mean that he is not a player worth investing in fantasy football. Like, in fact, it came out today. I wrote an article, the 10 best values in fantasy drafts right now. It's over at NFL.com. And I have Gabe Davis in my top 10. You have to click and read it to see where. But my argument is, last season, early in the year, he suffered an ankle injury that we were worried if he was going to miss a substantial amount of time. Yeah. He ended up playing through it. But then again, the Josh Allen elbow injury. And when you look at what Josh Allen was on deep passes before, where he had I think a 116 rating, and after it was 66, something like that, his completion percentage pummeled it. Like everything just decreased on the long ball. I think when you pair those two things together, along with the fact that we as a fantasy community put very high expectations on him, and when a player doesn't live up to those high expectations, we punish the player and we say it's the player's fault when it's just as much, if not more, our faults. But because of that, you're getting a big discount on Gabe Davis compared to a year ago. So I still think he brings all the same upside that people were excited about last year. I think inconsistencies will always be a part of his game because he is so deep ball reliant, a better and best ball type of player, but he's going as a barely in the top 40 wide receivers right now in best ball drafts. Yeah. To me, I've been drafting a lot of Gabe Davis.
Yeah, Florio. I think what you said there's a lot of really good stuff in there. You know, I think as a community, like fantasy football community, however you want to say it, is we do this thing where we kind of punish a player for how they performed the season before, and we don't take into the totality really of all the situational stuff, right? Like the elbow, like his ankle coming into the season. Like there were a lot of things going against Gabe Davis last year. So why shouldn't we have those concerns or those expectations for him this season that we did last season? Like there's a realistic possibility that he kind of pops this year, and we're just fading him because he had a weird season with weird situations.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't pop to the level that we thought, it doesn't mean that like you said, like he's a player that we should be punishing. It means, hey, maybe let's lower our expectations a little bit, but he's still a useful piece.
Yeah, man. And then somebody that, I loved coming out of Boise, one of my all-time favorite players in college football, Khalil Shakir. Can he take a step forward this season? Maybe if Gabe Davis doesn't get off to the start that we all kind of hope that he does, can he kind of maybe get into that wide receiver 2 conversation ahead of Davis in this offense?
I think he has a tough time getting ahead of Gabe Davis because it seems like the Bills like him like in the slot role, and so when they go too wide, I wonder if he would be playing well enough to push Gabe Davis out of that, who they love as a run blocker as well. In fact, last year it was often Stephon Diggs that would get pulled out of those two, and they would leave Gabe Davis on the field. So I think right now Shakir, he needs to focus on winning that number 3 role, because there's also Deontay Hardy, who I think is a sleeper here, Trent Sherfield. But even more than any of those guys, the talk is that they want to use Kincaid as the big slot. So if he's getting a lot of reps out of the slot, it might be hard for any other Bills receiver outside of the top 2 to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah, Florio. And speaking of Kincaid, the 25th overall pick this season, number 1 tight end off the board. People are really excited about this guy coming in. He's going at tight end 12 ADP at Underdog. Are you in on him at that cost? Do you think there's where he could crack that top 12 tight ends this year?
So I'm in on him at that cost, but not really. So I guess let me explain that. I have him ranked. I'm pulling up my rankings right now. I have him ranked as tight end 12. So right where he is going. But I very rarely wait until tight end 12 to take my starting tight end. Like typically I want to have one of the top 7. Like I love Darren Waller this year. So I don't usually wait long enough to have Kincaid as my starter. There has been places in best ball drafts and stuff where I have. So I'm okay taking him there. But tight end 12, you get what you pay for. He's probably going to be inconsistent week to week, have some up weeks, some down weeks. I'd rather pay up a little bit earlier and get a more premium player at the position.
Yeah, I love the Waller. That's my one of my guys. One of my guys this year for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like that too. And I've been kind of the same way with Kincaid. Like it's tough because, like you said, like it's tight end 12. There is some upside. He's still a rookie. I mean, it's a lot going either way. So I'm the same way. I kind of like getting that top 7. Moving to the backfield, people have been long wish casting running backs to kind of be good on this Bills team, considering how high powered the offense is. But first and foremost, do you think this is even a good situation for running back production with Allen as QB?
I do.
Okay.
I think so. I guess I might answer your next question as well.
Let it
But
roll,
I'm in on James Cook this season. He is one of my guys. He's one of my flag plants, I guess you could say.
Hell yeah. I love it. What's your expectations for Cook this year?
So the reason I like Cook so much is I keep saying he's paying for the sins of Devin Singletary. And what I mean by that is Singletary was never able to be more than a running back 3. So everyone says this is a bad situation for a running back. This is a running back can't succeed here, can't be more than an RB3. I don't agree because Devin Singletary would always get the last 2 years at least 175 carries and the last 3 seasons over 50 targets. The issue is Devin Singletary is not explosive. He is good for 4 or 5 yards, and that's kind of it. He was league average or a little bit below league average when it came to explosive runs. James Cook led the league. And I understand it was in a small sample size, but he got better in games where he got more volume and he got more explosive. And so I think you give him 175 carries and 50 plus targets, especially factoring in that he is a better downfield receiver and Josh Allen loves throwing the ball downfield. So now you have another creative weapon for him that teams are going to be focusing on the receivers and you could get Cook up the sideline or something like that. It is going to open up options that I don't think existed with Devin Singletary, but I think his explosiveness, yeah, he's probably never going to be like towards the top of the league leaders in carries or touches or anything like that. But I think he'll do a whole lot more with that volume. So you pay an RB3 price to get him. I think he could be an RB2, maybe even a top 20 back. And I think there's higher upside than that as well if he can get the goal line work.
No, it definitely makes sense. It kind of leads in. I mean, a little bit of what I was going to ask you too, like, because obviously we know the kind of the downfalls of running backs, like with running quarterbacks, right? So you kind of hit it though a little bit. Like you think that he can kind of overcome that a little bit, considering he gets more downfield.
Yeah, I think he'll do more as a receiver, but I just think like Devin Singletary had good volume. Like it wasn't great, but I think if suddenly James Cook is now giving you 5-6 yards at a carry, but has the ability to break out a 50-60 yarder, that Devin Singletary just doesn't have that capability. Yeah. So we're talking now about some big plays sprinkled in there as well, some long touchdowns. I think that elevates the ceiling for some big weeks, and that'll prop him up to, in my opinion, at least be an RB2 this season.
No, that definitely makes sense for sure. So if you're in on Cook, you have any love for Harris at where he's going, or are you kind of out on him then?
I'm kind of out on him. I've taken a couple of in best ball just to be like, hey, just in case I'm wrong or something like that. I do enough drafts where I like to differentiate a little bit, but every report out of Bills camp is that it's the competition. Harris is in a competition for the number 2 job right now, not even the starter. Like James Cook is the starter. And one thing I talk about a lot, McDermott believes in the rookie wall and likes to limit his rookies' usage early on. That is why I believe James Cook didn't get a whole lot of volume last year, but the plan is to let him go and let him loose in year 2.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Like drumbeat is strong for James Cook right now, and like I feel like anytime you see that when it's like this strong for guys, it's really. I mean, you got to kind of take a grain of salt, like some of the camp hype and things like that. But when it's like this strong, it's something to take notice of, I think. So I'm with you there. Is there anyone else on the team that you're interested in from a fantasy standpoint?
Nope. Not really. This is a very funneled offense. I do think like Deontay Hardy could be a sleeper if something was to happen to one of the top 2 wideouts, because I think he could play in the slot and out wide and really give this offense a little bit stuff that the other guys can't. But yeah, I think that I don't know if there's enough volume to go around for a tight end, 2 receivers, a running back. So I think that's probably where I'm capped with this offense.
I love that, Florio. And then a question that we are asking every one of our guests that we're having in these, regardless of team, who are your plant the flag players? I know you mentioned a couple earlier, but who are you going out and getting in every one of your drafts if you can?
I love Calvin Ridley this year. I love Amari Cooper. Darren Waller is my guy. If I miss out on him, Kyle Pitts is another tight end that I like. Jahmyr Gibbs, Tony Pollard, Jalen Hyatt deeper in drafts. I think, yeah, those are a lot of my guys. I like strive to go into drafts and come away with those guys. And if you could give me a team full of those players, I would be very, very happy.
Florio, we love it, and we love you coming on and helping us out with this. We are always going to be appreciative of this. And before we let you go, can you let the viewers know where they can find you and if you got anything coming up?
Yeah, Twitter is the best place at Michael F. Florio. You kind of get everything all in one. Same on Instagram there. NFL.com. NFL Fantasy Live is coming back, so definitely check that out. We got the podcast twice a week, but then rotoballer.com, SiriusXM on Sundays. I got a lot of content coming out there. And Florio's Football Show, my new podcast. Please go check it out. Have had a lot of fun guests and more coming up. It's probably the best place to get my kind of just all my fantasy thoughts in one show. So definitely check that out if you're so inclined.
Go check that out. And Florio, thank you so much again. We appreciate you, man. It's a blast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Next up, we have the lead NFL analyst over at the Fantasy Alarm, a 2021 FSWA Football Writer of the Year finalist. He has a new podcast, Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco, on YouTube. Find him on Twitter at Coop A Fiasco. It's time to welcome in the man, the myth, the tight end whisperer, and a recently new father, Andrew Coop Cooper. What's up, brother?
Rob, what's up, my dude? Yeah, and now I officially I got the Dad Bod to go with the Dad Bod Squad, right? I've got to go. I'm loading up. Buddy. And being a dad, it gives you extra time to be awake and think about football. So people might think that maybe I lost a step. I'm deeper in the notes, deeper in the game. Less
He's
time
never
for
been
sleep.
better.
That's right. Never been better, never been stronger. And I got the dad bod to go with it, baby. So let's get after it.
We love it, dude. He's an honorary member of the Dad Bod Squad, obviously.
Squad up.
And we are here to talk about his Pats, the Patriots. We're going to get into these New England Patriots with him. The only real departure on the offense was Jonnu Smith. They traded him away. Some key additions, obviously, Bill O'Brien, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mike Gesicki. First thing that I always ask is, what is kind of your gut expectations for this team for the 2023 season?
Yeah, man. So honestly, and we'll get into the individual positions, but I'll explain why the Patriots are kind of doing the most obvious thing that you expect them to do when they bring back a guy like Bill O'Brien, who orchestrated one of the most prolific offenses in 2011. And he was with the team in 2007. The Patriots 2007, 2011, two were the craziest offenses ever. But they're basically trying to recreate 2011. So as we get into the positions, I'll kind of lay out who's supposed to be doing what. The problem is, it's all about Mac Jones. Always is with a lot of these teams. I'm sure when you talk about the Falcons, you talk about all the great additions they made, and it still always boils down to the quarterback. So it's all about Mac Jones, really.
Yeah, dude. Speaking of that guy, the leader of this ship, Mac Jones, Bill O'Brien coming in, what can he do to kind of unlock Mac Jones to make him take that jump that we were waiting for last season?
So honestly, as a Patriots fan, just watching this team, Matt Patricia was calling offensive plays the way a defensive coordinator would. Like he was trying to he was focusing too much on keeping the other team guessing by mixing things up. But when you go back and look at Mac Jones, his success over the middle of the field was absurd. Like he was dimes over the middle. But when you watch it, like the first Bills game, Bill O'Brien, not Bill O'Brien, but Matt Patricia kept making him throw the edges of the field, leading to picks, it was insane. He was like 15 of 16 over the middle in that game. I think what Bill O'Brien does is he recognizes what the strengths and what the weaknesses are, and they went out and added the exact weapons to hopefully unlock some of those strengths. Like if you got a guy that can throw it over the middle, go get you Juju Smith-Schuster, go get you Mike Gesicki. So I think that's the big thing that Bill O'Brien does. He's not going to play the whole, rocks, paper, scissors game that defensive coaches try and play and keep you guessing. He's going to try and figure out what works and lean into it.
Yeah, Coop, those are some great points, and that's why I wanted to get you on, because you are a fan and you know what's going on. You've seen these games. Look at that. I mean,
right there, baby.
Right. So we're speaking to his heart right now.
That's right.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to get you on, because you know this team inside and out. So let's kind of pivot towards fantasy with Mac Jones. Can he be relevant with Bill O'Brien coming in? Is it somebody that you're trying to keep an eye on, or what's like a good season for him?
So in Superflex, he can be for sure, but pretty much anybody with a pulse can be in Superflex, right? The ceiling for him, in my opinion, I actually think it's higher than most people do, but the ceiling is probably like a Kirk Cousins or a Jared Goff, right? These are two guys that are capable of throwing 30 plus touchdowns, capable of throwing, 4,000 yards. We've seen it from both those guys, but the mobility is near zero. And that's what you're going to get from Mac Jones. Like the opportunistic running that always ends in a slide or going out of bounds because there's no reason for it. Hopefully, if anything, Mac Jones, maybe he can use Bill O'Brien to channel some of the QB sneak skills that Tom Brady was famous for, which that really masked Tom Brady's, zero mobility as well. But he was a QB sneak king. That's why he sprinkled a couple touchdowns in there. But you're not even going to get levels of mobility that you get from Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert doesn't run as much as he should. When you look at his workout metrics, dude, he's actually pretty athletic. I wonder if maybe Kellen Moore will open that up. But anyway, those guys, running for even 250, 300 yards, the way Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, those guys can, that's not really on the table for Mac Jones. So if he's ever going to have crazy upside, he needs to have like a Peyton Manning, Tom Brady 50 touchdown season. And neither one of us are going to predict that. Not even in my wildest Patriots dreams while I'm lying in bed at night would I predict that, especially the first year with Bill O'Brien. So his upside is probably in that, Goff Cousins range.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's if you're optimistic about what Mac Jones can be, that's kind of his ceiling, like you said. And then let's kind of keep going with the offense with the receiving options, right? Like they bring in Juju Smith-Schuster from Kansas City. We know that he had some really nice games there. You were talking about he's going to be that guy going over the middle. He's currently going as wide receiver 48. What's kind of your expectations for him this season? And can he be somebody as like a sneaky play to, fill as a flex play?
Yeah. So honestly, I love taking Juju simply because you look at this team last year. I mean, this team has always had that guy, and people think that it's always just been a slot guy. But you look at a guy like Julian Edelman, he actually played more snaps out wide than he did at the slot. It's a role where you play in the slot for 3 wide receiver sets. You move to flanker for 2 wide receiver, 2 tight end sets. And Jacoby Myers got a zillion targets in that role. Julian Edelman did. The last time Bill O'Brien coached this team, you know how many targets Wes Welker got?
I would assume upwards of 140.
Keep going up, dude.
Really?
Keep going up. 179 it was. Yes. I swear to God, dude. I swear to God. And in that offense, there were some other relevant pass catchers. Even though he had 170 plus targets, Rob Gronkowski was the tight end 1 and Aaron Hernandez was the tight end 3. So here's what I'm picturing for these receiving options. And this is what I was talking about earlier with recreating that old offense. You have Juju in the Wes Welker role. You have Hunter Henry as the inline Rob Gronkowski. And then you have Mike Gesicki as the move tight end as the Aaron Hernandez. And then, of course, Mac Jones is the Tom Brady. Now, the problem is every one of those players is worse than the player they're trying to recreate, right? So you're banking on the fact that the offensive line is probably a little better, though they don't have offensive line coach Dante Scarnecchia, who's an absolute legend. And the running back is probably better at this stage. At the time, Patriots have had good running backs in Corey Dillon and, the likes of that. Obviously James White is a gold-plated pass-catching back, but Ramondre Stevenson is the first 3-down back they've had since like Curtis Martin, right? And Belichick wasn't even the coach when they the last time before Ramondre Stevenson that they had a running back get 200 carries and 35 plus receptions in the same season was Curtis Martin and then Robert Edwards, a rookie. Not sure if you remember Robert Edwards. He had a great rookie year, and then the NFL did the stupidest thing ever. Did you ever hear about the beach flag football game?
No.
One year they did like a rookie sophomore game at the Pro Bowl. On the beach, and Robert Edwards, after his rookie year, blew his knee out and was never the same again. Like the dumbest thing as a Patriots fan, man, I still can't get over it, dude. They ruined Robert Edwards with the dumbest idea ever. Yeah, crazy. But that was the last guy. And Mondre's the next guy. So I look around and I say, okay, you look at what the other teams want to do in this division. Trey White and a cornerback for the Bills and Sauce Gardner, cornerback for the Jets. Sauce Gardner played only 9 snaps in the slot, right? And Bill Belichick is notorious for taking what you do best and wasting it. So I really think that they went out to get Gesicki and Juju to put them in the slot and challenge these guys to say, hey, Trey White, Sauce Gardner, bring them in the slot and cover our best guys or waste them out there on Devontae Parker. And honestly, it's an interesting challenge. I want to see what the Jets will do.
Yeah, let's keep going with these receiving options. But I love what you just said there. There's so many good things that you brought up. Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton, those are kind of the 2-3 guys. Is there anybody else in that receiving room that you think can take a step forward and beat maybe one of these guys out? Or are there any other really fantasy relevant wide receivers besides Juju?
So honestly, I think Juju is going to be the top target. So that leaves maybe room for one other guy. If you really think about it, if you take the top 2 targets from every team, that's 64 players. Now we both know there's not 64 fantasy relevant players. If you look at, a guy like Zay Jones, he was wide receiver 26, and Zay Jones wasn't that easy to trust, right? So odds are it's probably just Juju. But if I'm going to bank on somebody else, and I think that it's ambiguous and we don't know who the second target will be, we might as well go after somebody that we could start at tight end and go for that positional scarcity, right? Like if Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki get the same number of targets, one of them is more valuable in fantasy, right? So that's the way I look at it. It's why we were drafting Evan Ingram last year. And, so Gesicki's the guy I do like, but unfortunately the word out of camp so far is that he hasn't looked great, and that Hunter Henry has actually looked a little bit better. So people are going to have to make their own stabs there. If you want to take a Tyquan Thornton with his speed and best ball, go right ahead. I think that's an interesting bet. But Devontae Parker is kind of a big-bodied possession guy who's out there to run block, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to start him from week to week.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of, we already said you are the tight end whisperer. You said you have some love for Gesicki. So is he the guy you're targeting out of these two? Like, is that the guy you think is going to take that step up this year?
Yeah, I am. I mean, again, it's close enough that you can go format dependent, but Hunter Henry, he's going to be the inline tight end. He's very good versus man to man, which is great in the red zone, but he'll likely end up being target dependent. I think it's going to be, if you think about the Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert dichotomy, where Goddard was the inline guy and Gesicki operated out of the slot, I think it's going to look a lot like that, kind of like what we'll see with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So in best ball or standard, maybe you chase the touchdowns with Henry, but I think Gesicki's in the position to get more targets. And there's a guy, Alex Barth, he's a beat writer for the Patriots. He went back and pulled all the transcripts. They basically have them all, where you can just search easily for wordage. And basically the verbiage that he was looking for is people asking about the tight end from the Dolphins. And on 8 or 9 different occasions, Bill Belichick started his answer by saying, well, he's more of a big wide receiver. He found 8 different times where people asked about Mike Gesicki before he was on the Patriots, and Belichick corrected them and said, well, he's actually more of a big wide receiver. So if that's what he thinks about Gesicki, and Gesicki was upset with his usage last year and could have signed anywhere, and he decided to sign there, the writing is kind of on the wall as to how this guy is going to be used. So if we can get a guy that's playing more than 60, 70% of his snaps at the slot, and I've seen Gesicki play 90% of his snaps at wide receiver, then that's exactly what we want for fantasy, right? If you can start wide receivers at tight ends, it solves all your problems.
Yeah, man. And like you said, he's got that clear path to being probably the number 2 option on this offense besides Juju. Like, that's what we want. That's what we want in fantasy football. You got to get those guys that are going to be running the routes, that are going to be out there, can get the volume. I like that play, and he's going so damn late that it's a free square.
Free. Yeah, you can actually, it's one of those things where you don't even have to draft him, but with my very last roster spot, I always preach to go for scratch tickets rather than lottery tickets. A lottery ticket, you got to wait for them to call the numbers. We're talking like handcuffs. You got to wait for that to come in, or rookies. You got to wait for them to ramp up. Scratch tickets, we get the answer right away, right? And that's what a lot of these players are week one. If Mike Gesicki plays, if he goes out there and only plays like 50% of the snaps, we just drop him, And same with like right now in your dynasty league, Superflex, Clayton Tune. He could start week 1 for the Cardinals if Kyler Murray's not ready. And if Colt McCoy starts or Kyler's back, you just drop him, because making those early waiver moves is equally important. You have to drop somebody. So many times I see people drafting handcuffs and then they have to drop them week 1 anyway. Might as well drop somebody where we get some answers, get some upside. So that's, I love that guy as a last round pick, knowing, hey, if it's there, it's there. If it's not, move on.
Dude, that's a great way to put it. That's a words to live by for the fantasy football community.
Scratch tickets versus lottery tickets.
Yeah, dude. I don't think a lot of people think about that enough, where you, like you said, dude, week 1, we're going to know. We're going to know what Gesicki is, what he's doing on this offense, what his game plan is. And like you said, if it's not there, just drop him. Again, it was a free play. You can pick somebody else up who had a nice week 1 and move on. But let's go back. We're going to go back to what you were talking about, Ramondre Stevenson, maybe the first 3-down back you guys have had since forever. So we know what he did last season: 210 rushes, 89 targets. He was dynamic. He won people leagues. Do we expect him to continue this volume? Obviously, we know the track record with Bill Belichick and how he kind of utilizes his running backs, but is that because he hasn't had somebody as talented as a Ramondre Stevenson?
So that's the argument, right? The as talented. But the thing is, the reason that we know to a certain degree that this would be a split anyway, the best example is Deion Lewis, right? So if you go back, Deion Lewis was in the pass catching role, and he was on pace one year for like 80 targets before he got hurt. 2 years later, when they had James White, another back on the team, I think it was Jarvis Green Ellis, got injured as the starting back, and they moved Deion Lewis into that early down role. And he played all 16 games. He had a ton of carries, but he only had like 30 receptions. Even though he played way more snaps, way more way more involved, it's because the role was kind of split. And I'm a little worried that this team wants to do that. One indication is last year, week 1, Ramondre Stevenson played the third most, not the second most behind Damien Harris, but the third most running back snaps. You know what running back for this team played the second most snaps week 1 last year?
Week 1 last year.
Is he
still on the team?
He's still on the team technically, and it's such a random pull that
Ty Montgomery.
Nice pull, man. Ty Montgomery. Yeah. Good job, dude. Look at you.
Hey, I got it. On Rob. They were high on him before he got hurt.
So he played
a lot of talks about him.
More snaps week 1 than Ramondre Stevenson, and he played 20 backfield snaps and had 4 targets. And then he got hurt in the game and went away, and then it was all Mondre from there on out. But so the thing is, Ty Montgomery isn't playing that role this offseason. They have him working out with the wide receivers. He's not even so one of the an angel that was at Patriots camp pointed out that he's not even wearing the special helmets that running backs have to wear. So somebody was like,
legit receiver.
So exactly, because it's like, oh yeah, they work out wide receivers from time to time. But one of the beat writers is like, oh, he's not even wearing the special helmet, so that you have to wear if you're a running back. So that's the interesting point. So the guy that I'm kind of interested in, I like Ramondre at ADP. I think he's good enough to get a bunch of targets, get a bunch of carries, get the high leverage plays. But there's two things. Early third or so. But I'm trying not to draft him now if I can avoid it. I would like, they've had too many guys in for visits. Leonard Fournette. They've had Zeke in. I want to see those guys land somewhere else, and then I'll move up. There's guys like Tony Pollard, Ramondre. I kind of have a little bit of yellow tape around them where I'm kind of where it's like I'm taking them if they fall to me, but all my big leagues and everybody else out there, you should have your big leagues drafts in very late August or September.
Yeah.
If it comes to September and they don't do anything and all those guys sign elsewhere, I'll be reaching for these guys. That's the difference, right? But I'm a little worried there. And then I'll give you one other guy from the team that has like a deeper grab at running back. It's Pierre Strong.
Yeah.
So
he's the one that
I think he's the, if you the top right, when there's smoke, it's good. And the Ty Montgomery thing, the fact that he's lining up with the wide receivers, great news, right? Like that just makes it a little easier on us that we don't have to play that guessing game, right? And the good thing about it is that if it is Ty Montgomery and it's just a whole rug pull, well, you can just drop Pierre Strong for Ty Montgomery because nobody in the right mind is drafting him, and they're definitely not talking about him. You and me might be the only people on the planet talking about Ty Montgomery. You know,
that's a good way to put it. That's a great way to put it. Right. Now, let me ask you this. We'll keep going on with this. If they do not bring somebody in when we're getting closer to our draft, stuff like that, are you not concerned about the split time back as much with Mondre? Do you think he'll still get that volume that we saw last year, even if they don't bring somebody else in?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's all about high leverage plays at this position nowadays, right? Because there's always some sort of split. The goal line is going to be Mondre unless they bring in somebody bigger. Pierre Strong, like Zeke, exactly. He's such a say what you will about Zeke, but a 3rd and 1 where you need 1 yard, I still trust Zeke Elliott to get that yard. He got it every time last year. He scored touchdowns in like 10 straight games, right?
It just kept going, dude. He was killing my Pollard.
I know. But finally, I've been off Pollard, and finally I get a chance to be on. And it's kind of annoying for people out there that like, we can fade Pollard this whole time and still get in when it's time.
When it's right. Yeah.
But it is right now. And so when you look at the two big ones are goal line, and in my mind, I always ask the same question. If there's say Tyquan Thornton down the sideline, 40-yard toss, and it's pass interference in the end zone, the coach has the opportunity to send any player they want down to score that touchdown. On some teams, it's Jalen Hurts. On a team like the Lions last year, it was always Jamal Williams, right? He had 18 touchdowns for a reason.
The Vultures.
Once upon a time on the Patriots, LeGarrette Blount scored 18 touchdowns while only catching 7 passes, right? Like, that's one it just wouldn't stop. That is another one where it would not stop. And right now, that's Ramondre. So you get that high leverage situation. The other one is the 2-minute drill. And that's more important to me than just normal pass downs, specifically because you can't take that play. There's no substitutions. There's no time for it, right? So the player out there, he needs to know the entire playbook. He needs to know all the pass blocking schemes. He needs to know all the audibles. So if Pierre Strong isn't proficient in all those situations, you're not going to put him out there and then have to send somebody else out. Like, so Mondre could still get all, even if they mix in Pierre Strong on pass downs, normal pass downs, like your average third down, as long as he maintains those two situations, then he could easily be an RB1. And I think he does regardless. So Pierre Strong, as much as he is a guy you kind of throw a dart at in best ball because he's crazy fast, like 99th percentile speed fast. I still think Mondre, if he survives the gauntlet of the offseason, is a guy that you take in the second round and hope that he's the RB1.
Yeah. He has the upside, right? He
certainly does.
He gets that volume, and he's shown that he can produce as an RB1. And it wouldn't surprise me if we talk next year. He finishes RB8 this year, and we're all kicking ourselves for not taking him when he was in the third round. Like it's a real possibility.
And that's the crazy thing about this game, Rob, is we could draft him there now, and then 2 weeks from now they sign Zeke, and we're like, oh my god, yeah, he was here, right?
Yeah,
like he was here the other day. So it does make sense. So you end up kicking yourself a lot in this crazy industry, Rob.
Yeah, especially this time of the year, right? When drafts are starting to kick in, there's a ton of best ball stuff going on, a lot of charity leagues, and like all the weird signings are starting to happen. Now the dominoes are going to start falling, and then people's ADPs are going to move around a ton.
And the injuries Rob, man,
it's time, baby.
Take me back to the offseason, Rob. Take me back to March when it was all hopes and dreams, and that's the best time for speculating, isn't it? Where right after the Super Bowl, everyone's no injuries. Everyone's a free agent. We haven't done the combine yet, so we don't know who's slow. Everybody's fast, right? Everybody's awesome. There's and since the free agents haven't signed and the draft hasn't happened, the hypothetical full workloads for every RB are all there, right? It's just it's a magical time of year, really. Now
it is.
Real football comes along every year to ruin fantasy football, right?
Well, we all get kicked in the chicklets. I was going to ask you if there's anyone else on this team that you find interesting. I mean, we talked Ty Montgomery, so I don't know if there's any other deep divers that we can get into, but any other names you think?
Yeah, dude, there is. And I'll tell you this. You probably don't get this too much, but I think the Patriots DST is going to be a great option, because not only do they have like Matt Judon and all these guys that can create sacks, because I mean sacks is the most sticky stat. It's so hard to chase turnovers and fumble. Like fumbles are impossible to chase, but interceptions you can if you have the right guys. Like Trevon Diggs, we know that Asante Samuel once upon a time, not Asante Samuel Jr., but his dad. These guys they created situations that led to interceptions, but it's tough to chase that. But I like them twofold. Is that one, they have the sacks and their good defense. The other is they got a guy, Marcus Jones. I'm not sure if you've seen this guy. Last year he had a touchdown on special teams, a touchdown on defense, and a touchdown on offense. One of the few people to ever do that. Like he ran back an interception, then he ran back a kick, and then they just threw him out in offense and threw him a screen during the Bills game, and he took that to the house too. So this guy, he's a player, man. He's a ball maker. He's electric. And the thing is, it's like you can't start him in any format, really. Maybe IDP, actually. IDP, kind of if you get
there you go. IDP, if you're playing IDP, start.
Am I throwing out IDP of it?
Dude, we're getting
crazy
today, baby.
But when you have those guys, you can't discount when the Bears defense is winning people leagues, they not only had like Urlacher, but Devin Hester was running back kicks. They couldn't even kick it to Hester, right? You look at the Vikings, their defense isn't great, but that guy Kene Nwangwu, man, he's I count on it. He's run back 3 kicks in 2 years. A play like that, man, can make all the difference for your DST. So if you have a good defense that also has an electric playmaker that does punts and kickoffs, there's a little boost there, right, Rob?
Hey, I love that call, dude. Go get the DST. I have them in my in a couple dynasty leagues. I always kind of stack them if I can, because they're always gonna be safe, right? They're always gonna be a safe defense. They're never out of position. Bill Belichick knows how to get those guys to play the right way.
Bend, don't break, right?
Yeah,
they're such a bend, don't break defense where it's like
they're not gonna put you they're not gonna get you negative points any week. So I love that call. That's a great one. That, I think this is the first defense that we've talked about this offseason for this.
Oh, really? So. No, I know it's no fun, but I just like, when you think about a team like the Patriots, we're kind of scrapping for relevance here. But yeah, I mean, it's easy when you're the 49ers or the Eagles to say, yeah, take them but you have to take them early. I look around and say, okay, somebody takes the 49ers, okay, then somebody takes the Eagles. Now I'm really thinking about taking maybe probably still like the Cowboys first, but I start thinking about it, right? And people out there, one last bit of advice, little game theory advice, kind of like the last bench spot. If your league makes you take a kicker and a defense, say you have a 15-round draft and your team requires you to take a kicker and a defense, take that defense in the 13th round or even in the 12th round, because what happens is so many guys sit there and just say, oh, I'm going to go kicker defense in the last round. If you take your defense one round earlier, you can just take the player you wanted while everyone has to take a kicker next round.
Yep.
You only miss out on like 2 spots, but that can make all the difference. So last bit of game theory there, Rob.
No, I do that. I always do that. I'll start 13th, 14th, and I'll have my wild card at the end where somebody I've been waiting on to get.
Hell yeah.
Because everyone else is just going to go defense kickers in those final 2 rounds anyways. So you're not missing out on any draft slots, really.
Bingo, dude.
And then Coop, dude, one last question we're asking everyone, regardless of team, who are your plant the flag players this season? Who are you getting in every one of your drafts if you can?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'll give you one at each position. And so one I'm getting in virtually every league is Michael Thomas. And that one is everyone knows the risk, right? But this guy, the reality is he hurt the ankle 2 years ago. Last year, it wasn't the ankle. People think that this guy hurt his ankle and then he didn't play ever since. First of all, the year he hurt his ankle, he played in the playoffs. Like he battled through it. He wasn't a diva. He played. Then in the offseason, he had surgery and he missed the whole year, right? So he didn't play the whole next year. That's why people think he hurt the ankle and missed both those years. He only missed the one.
And it was a bad ankle injury.
It was right. He had the tightrope surgery, but then he was, the thing is he played through it. He played through that ankle injury, but the surgery went poorly. That was the problem. So, but he missed the whole year because of surgery. Last year, he comes out, first 3 games, he's on pace for 90 receptions, which would have been the same as DK Metcalf. I know we can't extrapolate that out, but he also got 3 touchdowns. If you want to extrapolate that out, that's 17 touchdowns. I mean, we're not going to do that, but he looked good. And then he didn't hurt his ankle. He hurt his toe. And it wasn't even his big toe. It was the one next to the big toe.
Okay.
And then once again, he tried to come back and play, and then it didn't work. So he had to have surgery. And that's what delayed everything. But now he's back. He's posted videos of him deadlifting a gazillion pounds. This guy if he just doesn't get hurt, he could be awesome, man. Yeah. And for once, you don't have to draft him as your wide receiver 1 or 2 or 3. You throw him on the bench, right? So that's what we're going for. Yeah, we're going for your whole bench is about upside. The upside of this guy, if he doesn't get hurt, is that he's Michael Thomas. Does that sound pretty good? Right?
That he's a wide receiver 1. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Derek Carr can feed him the rock. Even with Chris Olave there, he could feed him the rock. He was doing it last year. They were doing it last year. Yeah. So I tight end.
I'm sorry. I love that call because he's somebody I'm actively going for. The only thing for me is that's making me so scared of Olave. Like I love Olave. He's one of my favorite players. And I think he could be a wide receiver 1 in this year. But that's the like one part where I'm like, damn, I don't know if Olave is going to get there if Michael Thomas is Michael Thomas.
Well, so here's the thing about that is it's all about Derek Carr. If you look at the top 20 wide receivers last year, right? 10 of them came from just 5 teams. The good offenses will oftentimes have multiple wide receiver 1s and 2s, right? Yep. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Like there's 2 more that I for some reason are escaping me, but they're out there, man. So and like I mentioned, Zay Jones was very close to being in there with Christian Kirk, even with Evan Engram there. So if the quarterback can play well, you can support the top 2 targets, right? And that's why what we look for you've seen this professional segue. What we look for in a tight end is a top 2 target on the team. If you go through and look at the top 50 all-time tight end seasons, the difference-making seasons, there's maybe 1 or 2 where the guy wasn't a top 2 target on the team. And we're talking like 2014 Martellus Bennett, just complete outliers. Virtually everyone is a top 2 target on the team. So I look at a guy like Darren Waller. and I say, why can't this guy lead the team in targets? Right?
100%.
100%. And it's very few guys have got double-digit targets in the game ever. I've seen this guy get more than 15 on 4 different occasions. I've seen him have 19. I've seen him have 200 yards against the Jets. Like, this guy is absolutely capable of just monster performances. And now the conditions that allowed for that, back when Antonio Brown got kicked off the team for bringing a fake helmet to practice and freezing his feet off, right? Like, those conditions are kind of right. We're kind of back, right? Like,
wild.
He called the GM a cracker. Like, oh my God. Like,
so wild.
I want Antonio Brown back. I want him to start a podcast. That's what
I was going to say. I just want to interview the guy.
Yeah.
I just want to talk to him for 2 minutes.
I get 2 minutes might be a long time, dude. With Antonio Brown in the house. So yeah, Darren Waller, man. It's like, I look at Dallas Goedert, and to me, that guy is more of like a handcuff plus. Very safe, but he needs an injury to one of the wide receivers to really have upside. Whereas Waller, he could have it right off the bat. Of course, he's risky, but every tight end, for the most part, is, man, who cares, right? So might as well shoot for the moon. And then how are we on time? Can I give you the other position?
Keep going. Yeah.
All right. Running back, Miles Sanders, dude. Lock that in for me. You look at you're in. All right, let's go.
You're hitting my guys. Like, this is my list right here. We're doing our Dad Bod episode tonight.
All I have to know is that Mario's out on these guys, and then I'll know for sure that they're the right guys.
He is. He's out on Waller. He's out on Miles, and I'm in.
Thank God. You're in. He's out. They're perfect then. They couldn't be.
The stars are aligning.
The stars are aligning. Conditions are perfect. So shout out Mario. Wish you could be here for this, but that just means I have to get back on at some point before the season, or you guys can come on my show. Yeah,
it's open whenever you want. Hey,
okay, we got to get the 3 of us together again, dude, and chat it up. Shout out Mario, dude. Mario sucks at fantasy, so we like Miles. So he doesn't like Miles Sanders. We like him. He's going to. He just left a team where everyone loves the line and they love the RPO, and it blinds us to the fact that Jalen Hurts had the second most carries inside the 5-yard line behind only Jamal Williams, not of any quarterback, of any player. And that team threw the fewest passes to the running back of any team. Bottom. And the other 2 teams that were the bottom 3 were the Ravens and the Bears. What do those teams all have in common? Mobile quarterbacks. Yeah. And I was like, maybe this isn't the only thing. I went back and I looked at when Doug Peterson was a coach in 2019. He threw 39 screen passes to just Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, just those 2 players. This past year, Miles Sanders and Boston Scott combined for more snaps than they did in that year. Guess how many screen passes Nick Sirianni threw?
This year, I would say 15.
6.
Maybe. 6. Okay.
6, dude.
Yeah.
6.
So 10.
15 would have been a huge drop from 39, right? Mm-hmm. 10 would have been a crazy drop. 6 is meaningless. It's nothing. Dallas, they throws a lot more screens to guys like Dallas Goedert. So you take that guy, Miles Sanders, you go and put him on a new team where Scott Fitterer, the offensive coordinator, I posted a video on my YouTube of not on my YouTube, on my Twitter of him saying, hey, we're going to throw you the ball a ton. Remember when you caught 50 passes? That was fun, right? Like, it's a perfect clip for guys that like Miles Sanders. So why not go for upside there? That's my play there. And the last one is pretty boring. My quarterback, I love Tua, but he's actually going in the QB1 range. So, Tua, if I can get him at a good price, I like him. The other one is Russell Wilson. And the reason I'm in on Wilson, QB 15 last year. He finished QB 15, despite how awful everything was and how it was just a nightmare with Nathaniel Hackett. And now they bring in Sean Payton, man. And look at Trevor Lawrence with the nightmare with Urban Meyer. And then Doug Peterson, a real coach, comes in, and everyone's like, oh, that's what a real football team looks like, right?
Lawrence is actually pretty good.
That's funny how that happens, right? Like, you just they didn't even change that much besides that. They just brought in a guy that wasn't totally weird. And Sean Payton, have you seen his comments on Nathaniel Hackett?
Yeah,
they're actually pretty rude.
He's getting aggressive.
He's being actually.
Sean Payton might be good, dude. It might
he's
be
being
really
straight up mean. He literally said, he's like, everything they did last year, we are doing the opposite.
He's bullying Nathaniel Hackett. Right?
Bullying Nathaniel Hackett. I think Nathaniel Hackett deserves it because he was behind a quote that absolutely ruined one of my fantasy seasons.
Yeah, he killed everybody. He killed a lot of people.
A while back, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bills. And he famously said, we're going to give the ball to CJ Spiller until he throws up. Nathaniel Hackett said that. And that year, CJ Spiller was That was the year, and Nathaniel Hackett was the one that said it. And CJ Spiller was going in the first round, he was terrible, dude. He did more throwing up than he did getting the ball. So Nathaniel Hackett, to me, he deserves all that. We're finally getting our revenge in the fantasy community.
Yes, we are. And Coop, you just killed this interview, dude. I loved everything about it. You know your Pats inside and out, and we always appreciate you stopping by to help us out. You are one of the best people we know. Before we let you go, let the people know where they can find you and what you have coming out, man.
Cheers, my dude. They can find if you just follow me on Twitter at Coop A Fiasco, COOPAFIASCO. I retweet everything, all the shows I'm on, everything else, but I do a show every morning, 9 to 9:30, and then another one 1 to 3 on Fantasy Alarm and Better Sports Network. That's out there. And then all my articles, including the Ultimate Tight End Guide, which is kind of my piece de resistance. That's on fantasyalarm.com. So check all that stuff out, and make sure you check out all these episodes on here, all 32 squads, because if you bring in people that are passionate, and I know you have, right, that you know, bringing in guys like Florio to talk about the Bills, right? Like that's honestly how you get not just the deep stuff, but the unbiased stuff. Like I have no problem telling you this guy's going to suck on the Patriots and avoid this situation and all those things, and being brutally honest about what Mac Jones' ceiling is, because we have to be as analysts that follow teams very closely. Right?
You get the good, bad, and the ugly.
For sure.
And Coop was good today, dude. We love you. Thanks again, man.
Cheers, dude. Thanks.
Next up, we have Dr.Jesse Morse with us. He features on the Fantasy Doctors Twitter at the Fantasy Doctors. So at the Fantasy DRS. They just partnered with Sleeper for their injury draft guide. So make sure to go check that out and get yourself a copy of that. You can also follow Jesse Morse at Dr. Jesse Morse. That's at Dr. Jesse Morse for all of the latest injury news and concerns for NFL. Jesse, man, we appreciate we got to meet you last year at the FF Expo. We truly appreciate you hopping on and talking some Dolphins with us today.
My pleasure.
We saw the Dolphins last year. They had their super exciting team. Their obviously biggest concern was Tua and his health. In the offseason, we saw some departures like Mike Gesicki. They also added kind of Tua insurance, Mike White. Then they added another running back, which is another insurance plan, Devon Achane. They have Robbie Anderson or Chosen Anderson. But they also lost somebody very early this offseason. Big injury with Jalen Ramsey going down with his knee. With all of that being said, what are your expectations for this team in the 2023 season?
So their offense could be nasty. Tua packed on about 20 pounds. Muscle, predominantly muscle. He's thick, real thick. Now, have you seen any videos of him? He looks real thick. And he's been training hard a lot. He's been working with all the regular guys because I know who they train with. And they're usually running a ton of routes together way before even the season. So Barrios actually looks pretty good. Tyreek always looks good. Waddle is great rapport, and even Craft, or however you pronounce his name, he's kind of going to look good. And then the running backs look good. They're fast. They have a really fast team. Their chain is super fast. Most of it actually might be the fastest on the team, which is kind of crazy given his history. But I mean, as long as they can stay, obviously everything hinges on Tua. I obviously have reservations and concerns about his concussions. And that's, it's kind of the elephant in the room. If he's good, then they should be very good. Obviously, they lost Ramsey, and that was kind of a relatively important part. But their defense could be really good. Their offense should be really good. And it just kind of hinges on how healthy Tua can stay. And this division is loaded. And the conference is even more stupid loaded. So it's hard,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you brought up Tua, so let's talk about his expectations coming into his third season. You were talking about his concussion issues. What is your major? I know I don't want to say concern, but what could this do to him? Like, is it one hit kind of, and he's done for the season? Is it a career possibility ending situation that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, concussions are traditionally stackable or cumulative. And in high school, you usually don't kind of talk about them. They don't really even call them a lot of places. In college, they call them a little bit more, but still, I think they're kind of thrown underneath the rug. But in the NFL, they're a lot more, viewed. And after his what ended up being 3, whether or not you want to call the first one a concussion is a separate discussion. They actually changed the rule and basically called it the Tua rule. And they said that anybody who has ataxia, which is him kind of looking drunk, that kind of look, is because technically it can be from the lower back. I mean, it's probably super rare, but it technically can be. And that's what they blamed it on. But that is traditionally a sign of a cervical or head issue, which is usually what it's from. And they said if someone shows up with that, then they automatically are done for the game, regardless of how they feel. And we saw a couple guys last year. A.J. Dillon was one. Amon-Ra St. Brown was another who left, never went into the protocol, but they just held him out. So now I'm going to play just devil's advocate because we might see it. What if Tua or Mahomes or whoever suffers a possible concussion in the first play or the first series or whatever, and then misses the rest of the game?
Yeah.
And technically is not in the concussion protocol. How tight or conservative are they going to be? Yeah. We don't know. I mean, it really, they were playing scared last year, rightfully so. But now are they loose again, or are they playing scared again? The other thing about Tua in particular is he's at very high risk for another concussion. And if you remember, both of his concussions were him getting hit and then him smashing his head on the back of the ground. Yeah. One was in cold weather, which is justifiable. The other one was actually at Lockhart, or not Lockhart, that's what Full Auto used to be called, at Hard Rock, and because it's turf. So turf has concrete underneath it. So, yes, he beefed up. Yes, he did judo or taekwondo or, Muay Thai or whatever.
Taekwondo. I read that.
There's a bunch of different types. Whatever one he specifically did, probably a combination. Hopefully it helped him learn how to fall, but I don't know. He's not the most mobile guy. If you track all of the quarterbacks that run for over 150 yards, he's not even in that group, which is not a big threshold. And there's like 20 guys that did that. So it's like he's not a mobile guy per se. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets hit, what happens. He took a month to clear the last protocol. Were they just being extra cautious? Did it literally take him a month? I don't know. We'll never know. But if that happens, all eyes are going to be on them again. So we know that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the scary thing with the Dolphins, right? There's just such a poor history with how they handle injuries, stuff like that. So, like
you were very vocal about that, Jesse. I feel like I remember seeing you mention that a couple times on Twitter about, and it may have been the Amon-Ra one, but I definitely remember you talking about the first 201 and kind of like, what are we doing, NFL?
I mean, and a lot of people thought I was, I would say responsible, but I was the doc, and I wasn't. I don't have any affiliation. I'm not an independent neurotrauma consultant. I would call it UNC. I have the credentials to do it, but I don't. I don't want the politics behind it. But yeah, I mean, it's a slippery slope. You don't know. That's one of the reasons why his ADP is suppressed. I mean, besides the fact he doesn't run, but it is because of that risk, and no one can truly quantify that risk. He could go like Brandon Cooks and go 4 years without another concussion. Or he can suffer another 1 or 2 this year and maybe end up going the Jordan Reed route.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, Jesse. And let's kind of play, everything goes right according to plan. Tua stays healthy. What's your kind of outlook for him fantasy-wise this season? Do you think he could put up a top 12 performance, top 8? Where are we at with him?
So unlike the majority of the quarterbacks above him being drafted above him, he doesn't have that rushing upside or at least he has never shown it. Let's put it that way. He might have it, but we've never seen it. So, I mean, I think if everyone stays healthy, let's play that game. I think it's safe to say Mahomes, Allen, Burrow. I have indifferent thoughts about Lamar, but yeah, we'll say Lamar. Herbert, you can include in there. Geno, T-Law, Russell Wilson should presumably bounce back. I have Dak running more this year. I mean, we're already at 9 or 10, and I've probably missed 6 people already. So in that regard, I mean, could he be top 10? Yeah, but he doesn't run, so he's going to have to throw a ton to make up for that, which is possible. I mean, they might have to do that in the AFC because of how crazy everything is. But without that rushing, which is a huge boost, he's going to have to throw a ton. So I don't think top 8 is realistic. Maybe top 12. I mean, he'd have to pull like a Goff or a Cousins season. Like it'd have to be like that in order for him to do that.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense.
With the weapons, right? Like the weapons, the weapons,
I mean,
and that's what we're about to. He's loaded, and that can help. And I know that's Robbie's next kind of segue in here is the wide receiver duo of Tyreek and Waddle.
Yeah, let's talk about those guys. I mean, Tyreek and Jalen were both top 10 wide receivers last season. And that's even with the 2 injuries that were sustained. Do we see this pace kind of continuing for these 2 receivers? Is there a world where we don't see Tyreek and Waddle, I guess, both inside the top 15?
Yes. I think Tyreek's in there unless he gets injured. I think that's a given. Tyreek is matchup proof, is QB proof. His YPR is ridiculous. Literally a point higher than the next guy, which is 33%. And I think it's zone. But Waddle is a little bit of a different story. Waddle was very dependent on Tua. When he went from Tua to not Tua, we'll call it. He dropped like 2 or 3 points per game. Like maybe more than that. Like it was a big drop. They added some more weapons this year. Gesicki wasn't really a big part of their plan. And that's why
with McDaniel, right?
And they're not just that they don't really use the tight end. So I still think they're going to use. They have a couple more wide receivers, Chosen or Robbie or whatever you want to call him. Actually has ridiculous deep numbers. Like I know I've met him. He's an interesting guy. But if you look at his deep ball numbers, he hasn't dropped a deep ball since like 2018 or 20, like a long time, like 5 years.
Insane.
But I don't remember how good. I think Tua is pretty good with deep ball. I don't remember this. I have.
Yeah, he actually. I mean, from top of the head, I think he was one of the best deep ball passing accuracies.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's good. And because I remember he was working with Nick, we call him Perform, last year to strengthen up his throwing.
Yeah.
That's who he trained. That's who Dalvin was training with the other day. That's Perform.
Okay.
So, so he has the deep ball. I think Berrios is kind of going to be a little sneaky. So they're pretty deep. They still have Cedric Wilson or whatever his name is.
He's drafted too.
Yeah, I mean, they have
Higgins,
3 or 4 running backs. Yep. So like they're deep. I mean, they're really deep.
Yeah.
That is where I wanted to go with that is the running back. So like we know that McDaniel loves to use multiple running backs throughout the season, and like this can be frustrating for fantasy football. We have Mostert, Jeff Wilson. They drafted a chain. Is there any buzz coming out of camp like who the guy will be, or is this a full blown?
I think they're all fast. They're all good. They're all fast. Jeff Wilson looks good when he's all in, right? He's struggled to stay healthy and he doesn't stay in there. But a chain has been making some crazy plays. That kid is fast, really fast, and just really explosive. They're gonna mix and match. I think that's just how it's going to play out. And you really want to throw a monkey wrench into it. Wait until Dalvin signs, and then it's really going to be crazy.
Wait until
I honestly think that's what's going to happen. He lives here. He's from here.
I didn't realize he was from Miami.
Yeah, him and his brother both went to the Miami. I forget which one it is. One of them. It's like 10 minutes up the street. Yeah, he trains here in Davie and in Northwest Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, I mean, he prefers to be down here if he can. I mean, Lamar's from here. Yeah. A lot of people are from here. But yeah, I mean, I think he was gaslighting. Is that probably the word for the Jets? I think that he was trying. I mean, I'm sure he would have went there if the money was right, but I think he was trying to increase that, and maybe now he's just waiting for an injury. I don't know.
Yeah, and let's kind of, I guess, a two-part question onto that. If Dalvin goes there, is he just going to be kind of the alpha dog in that running back room? And if not, let's say he doesn't go there, who are you kind of targeting for fantasy out of those three? Are you looking for the rookie, A-Chain, or are you just kind of staying away from this backfield in general?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they have an alpha. I just don't think that's how they're going to be built. If you follow the money, for what it's worth, Mostert actually has the highest potential. I think, in my opinion, a chain has the highest potential, or how I always probably butcher it, but yeah, but I'm not touching. I need guys who are going to catch the ball. Like, the data is so strong for receiving running backs, like it's ridiculous. They're not the team to target for running backs in terms. I mean, yeah, if you want to look for a flex in a standard league, okay, fine. But I just don't think. I think there's plenty of other guys that have higher upside that have less competition.
I think that not only like the competition, but like Mostert is so good when he plays, but man, it's been so long since we've seen him put together a full season. And I think last year was like one of his healthier seasons.
Yeah.
In this offense, kind of transitioning here, are there any other offensive players that you've been like, man, I love them? I know you mentioned a couple wide receivers. We've talked about the RBs, but is there any other guys that we haven't talked about today that you're like, man, I've been trying to scoop them up in fantasy or just in general?
Not on the Dolphins.
Maybe even in Dynasty. Okay.
Not on the Dolphins that come to mind. Yeah. I mean, I think their offense is pretty straightforward. In my opinion, there's really only three people to own. Maybe a chain if you want to get a little exciting, but I mean, I think it's really just Tua, Waddle. I mean, I don't even know what you feel about Tua, but obviously Hill for how long he plays, Waddle, and then maybe a chain. I don't know how much the other guys are going to get love enough to be like, yeah, they're relevant.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it when you answered that running back question. Like it's tough to trust any of them with the work. So I agree.
Yeah. And Jesse, one last question. We ask all the guests that have been doing this for us, the series of podcasts that we're putting together, who is kind of your plant the flag players this season, regardless of team, any team in the NFL? Who are you going out trying to get in every draft and that you think is going to kind of smash their
guys? You guys.
There's a couple.
Give them to us.
It's hard to do because of where they're being sequenced, but I really like Chubb. I like Pollard.
Yeah,
I really like Pollard.
That's my guy.
I have an affinity for Ayuk. That it's a little sticky, but I think it's possible. I like that a lot. And then I'm trying to think. Herbert is up there. I know Keenan Allen is kind of a risky, but the data is so beautiful on him. If he can stay healthy,
dude, you're not the only one that said that.
I think those are the ones that jump out. Some of the rookies are just bananas. This rookie class was silly. The running backs, I mean, Bijan is obviously Bijan, but I just don't think that they're gonna throw enough to him for him to justify an ADP of 3 or whatever it is. So it's like for me, I love who's sneaky. I love Gibbs, but again, he's expensive, so you really have to. He has to be perfect. If Swift can stay healthy, he could be unbelievable. You know, like I had him as my RB1 last year. Like, and he has the talent. We know that. He has the tools. He just, and you know, what's his meathead up in Detroit decided to run the ball 56 times on the goal line with Jamal. So that just obviously destroyed his value. But and then he just can't stay healthy. He had a high ankle. He had a bad shoulder. Like, that's it. There's your 6, 3, 4, 5 games, and that's enough to derail you. If he can stay healthy, I mean, he could be ridiculous. I mean, he truly can be. You know, I feel he could be CMC. Like, he has that luxury. I just don't think he can stay healthy.
Yeah, it's funny the difference a year makes. It's funny the difference a year makes. I mean, me and Mario both had him inside our top 4 last season, right, Mario?
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
I mean, everything lined up. We didn't expect Jamal, but you know, we knew they were going to run the ball, bite their kneecaps. You know, but you know, but you know, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. But I'm a Patriots fan by nature. So I'm actually off Ramondre. I know it sounds weird. If you look at historical data, they do not. They're not a one-back team. They never have been. It was a weird season. There was injuries. James White retired. Montgomery got injured in the first game. They don't trust. Belichick doesn't trust rookies, so both rookies were out. So it's like, oh, okay, here you go. You know,
I love that you said that.
I mean, in what's weird, and I really went deep in my draft guide, like I'm analyzing 15 years worth of data. It's not really injury risk. It's more volume.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't get even enough volume to justify his finish. Like, he was super efficient.
Yeah.
That was the only way that he finished that way. Because I don't even think he got to 279 touches, I believe. He didn't even hit 300 touches. Yeah. I think the only one that was more efficient than him was Tony Pollard, and he was ridiculous.
Well, he's been super efficient. His hyper efficiency.
I mean, he almost pulled a Kamara-esque season. Like, who doesn't run a whole lot, but he caught 81 balls 3 years in a row. Like that. Like, he almost pulled that off. That's hard to do. You know, and my concern is if they bring in Zeke or whoever, you know, or even give it to Kevin Harris or Pierre or whoever, even if they take 75 to 125 running touches from him, that's going to be enough to lower him out of the top 12. Like, I just don't think it's realistic for him. They change the entire offensive structure. They're running a lot of 12. Hunter Henry looks really good. Gesicki looks good. Like, I don't think they're going to be dumping to him. Like, this offense is going to be completely different than last year's chaos. You know, so
they have an OC. You guys have OC.
Like everything is different. Like the entire offense should be structured different. So in that regard, I just don't see how Ramondre does that unless everything falls apart again, which is possible. But for an ADP of 12 or 13 or wherever 10, wherever he's at, like,
he's high.
Give me Gibbs over Ramondre.
He's an interesting one, man. Is like you either are fully in on him, you think he's going to put up a top 5 performance, or you're semi out where you think he's going to fall outside that top 12 category. I'm with you. I have him at my RB 14, I think, and that's like me being conservative to a respect, but I'm with you. It's just the historical data of Bill Belichick and how he likes to operate his running backs. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that he's going to get that work again.
I mean, they're already they had James White forever. They had, last time was Corey Dillon, and that was we're looking like 20 years, almost between 18 and 20 years. Like LeGarrette Blount didn't do that. Like they didn't do that. It's just not them, you know. So, you know, in Najee, one more Najee. I think he's so inefficient. He's so inefficient. I don't think he's going to get 350, 370 touches, and unless Warren gets hurt or something happens, like I don't see how he finishes in the top 10 again. You know, Big Ben's not there to throw it to him 85 million times. Like, you know, So it's like
we see eye to eye, Jesse. We see eye to eye. Because I'm off on him too.
I wanted to add one thing there, or two actually. Swift. I had the same thought about the CMC thing, I've like, there is that feeling, right? Like he barely played last year and finished and this isn't points per game because I think it was actually better, but overall he finished RB21. That's where he's being drafted right now, and he missed so much time and he
didn't even play like half the game every game, like
40% or something. Yeah.
You know, like we know he's not going to run a whole lot. I mean, he doesn't really, you know, Penny, if Penny can stay even remotely close to healthy, he's going to be ridiculous this year. Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about his injury. It was bad. Like, okay, let's put it this way. Tony Pollard and Rashad Penny had almost identical injuries. The difference is Rashad Penny's also had Michael Thomas's bad ankle tear. That's the additional injury. That's how bad his injury was.
That's nuts.
So we haven't heard about this at all. Like zero. I haven't heard a single thing about Rashad Penny besides the fact he looks okay. But yeah. That medial ligament, this ligament over here, is why. I mean, if you look at the past 2 years, Penny has the best running yards per carry, 6.2. Like
that's nuts.
Who does that? No one does that. Like, you know, so it's like he's really good, but I think he's played 15 games in the past 3 years. Like, come on.
Yeah, it sucks.
Like
he's always I always draft him because I just think he's such a good player. Like you said, if he stays healthy and stays on the field, he's just so efficient that he could easily be a top 10 back. Easily be a top 10 back.
He has the pedigree. He's a first round pick. He's had the worst injury luck. It's so bad.
It's so bad. And I noticed that the Pats have managed kind of giving Ramondre the superstar treatment there by managing his touches early on.
They're babying him.
It's kind of it's kind of like, okay, they're prepping for a big season. That's kind of the vibe that it sets off. But it's
they basically said he fell apart. He got tired at the end of the year, which of course he did.
Yeah,
that's a lot of carries. You know, he played every game. He played every game. He got
the offense
by far his most touches. You know, and he was, as bad as the offense was, he was the offense pretty much. So I get it. I don't know how it's going to play out this year, but, you know, I see, you know, I can understand where they're going with it. I hope he has a great season, but for fantasy purposes, I just can't. I don't think it's realistic.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jesse, we appreciate you so much for taking the time for jumping on with us. Before we let you go, if you wouldn't mind plugging in where people can find you. Obviously, we plugged it at the top, plug it in again, and anything that you have coming up. I know you sent us your draft guide. I know that I think it's already out for this season as well. Yeah, if you want to let people know where they could find that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. So I predominantly write on Twitter. I have an Instagram, but I don't really ever open it. And then we have a TikTok and a YouTube. That's just our videos go there. I'm never really on there. I run my own page. The Fantasy Doctors have their own one that we put some content on there, and then the website's being revamped right now. I do a weekly or pretty much daily, almost injury board, I guess you'd call it, or chart notes, whatever. As the season starts, I will be updating it daily for the premium members of hey, what's the percentage of this guy playing on Sunday? And it will update every day. So that one's a premium. I think it's like $1.50 a week or something. So it's not crazy. In terms of the draft guide, it's like if you were to take PFF's data, reception, perception, player profile, and put them all together. And then you add the element of injury, all the injury stuff. And then you add, I just finished it yesterday, the injury risk score, which is never perfect, but it gives you an idea of, in my opinion, how risky people are. So it's like basically 1 to 10, 10 being really risky and 1 being no risk. Hey, how risky is this guy? Or, is this guy? And it just gives you a little bit of a feel. If you want to put a credit score number on them per se. Everything's available either if you want to, if you're into Sleeper and you want to put $20 into Sleeper under the code TFD, then we'll send you the guide there. Or if you can go to thefantasydoctors.com and there's a couple different packages, but the draft guide's like $29.99 or something like that. So and it's super helpful. There's a rookie, all the rookies are broken down. Each injury is broken down and hey, what is ACL? What is this? How did all the Liz Franks do? What is the data show for that. So it's helpful, but also really deep dive into injuries. So
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I looked at yours and I went through it quite a bit, and I remember reading because this was my biggest concern, and it was like reading it. The re-injury on CMC was super high, and that was always scary. And there was a couple other guys that were in there, and I love the fact that the data deep dives, which obviously for the average non-medical person, it could be a lot, but it was so interesting, dude. So I loved it.
Yeah, I pulled back a lot. Last year I went a little too crazy, and it was like a friggin' novel. This year I really picked the main 5 to 8 guys, depending on the position, that were injured, and I did a profile on them. And then I gave like we did a ton of cool charts this year. Like, hey, what is the injury correlation with volume of touches? What is the average, top 10 running back stat look like? So you have an idea of like what all these different things look like. What is the, average of a tight end going in the first round of a rook in the draft? What's the odds that they actually do well in their first year, a la Kincaid? Like that type of stuff. So it's not just injuries. I took a lot of historical data because that's how my mind thinks. And then I broke it down so that you see it maybe from a different lens. And then all of my rankings, which will probably be updated weekly, have a justification. So it's like, hey, this guy's YPRR, this guy scares me. This guy's not going to be healthy, so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, it's super informative. Awesome. And for me, I could speak for myself only. Like, I used it a ton last year in my drafts. It's one of the best things you can go out and get. Like you said, it's just a ton of really good data on top of the injury issues that no one else is really doing. It's something unique and can help you guys win your championship. So definitely go get that.
Thank you again, Jesse. We appreciate you taking the time, man. It was awesome having you on here. It was a blast. And we'll hopefully talk to you again. So maybe sometime during season or even just through Twitter, man. We'll catch up.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you, Jesse. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Take care.
Next up, we have the one and only Mr. Conan Grune coming in to talk about the New York Jets. You can find him over on Twitter at OneStatOneDay. That is the number 1 stat, the number 1 day, where he puts out daily trivia. It is probably my favorite fantasy, not even fantasy, just football account in general on Twitter. Conan, man, long time no talk. It's a pleasure to have you here to talk some Jets. How have you been?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thanks for the kind words about my account. I mean, I try to keep it rolling, but as we kind of talked before the episode started, Elon's kind of screwed me over recently. I'm finding it hard to get to people's guesses and stuff, but we'll see. We'll see if a upgrade to Twitter Blue will hopefully fix those things in the coming days and weeks. But I'm excited to talk Jets and football. I'm a Patriots fan over in the same division, so I'm not excited about all the other teams getting better while we're out here just, signing Devontae Parker to an extension that we don't really need to do. But, we'll see how it plays out. I'm excited to just talk about this team. A lot of new things, a lot of exciting things. So ready to get into it.
Yeah, dude. Come on over and join that Twitter X with us because we are on there. The Jets, however, they have had some key departures. They traded away Elijah Moore to my Cleveland Brownies. I'm super happy about that. Braxton Berrios leaving, James Robinson, Mike White, some offensive linemen, defensive players as well. Key additions, obviously the big one, Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Then he brings in some of his boys, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. They bring in Mecole Hardman as well. Adrian Amos, a safety on the defense, which is a pretty good upgrade. Something I ask all my guests to start off this combo. Where do you see this team going? How good do you think they can be? And what are your expectations for them this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think expectations for the team should be Super Bowl or bust. Like, I think they brought in Aaron Rodgers, who is supposed to be a huge upgrade. We'll get to that in a little bit, just specifically about him and comparing him to, certain other quarterback that was there for a little while. But, I think personally, I think there's going to be some growing pains in year one. I think Rodgers will look better than 2022 Rodgers, but I don't think he's going to quite get to the MVP caliber. Every single year he's a top 5-10, like no lower than that kind of quarterback. And so I do think there's going to be a little bit of, catching up to do in terms of getting everything right. And so I do think, they might make it into the playoffs, wild card, whatnot. But I don't think they're going to reach that ultimate goal that they really should have. Like the roster, or if you look at the roster around them, offense, defense, like they have a roster where if they have a quarterback that's, competent, they should absolutely be, just Super Bowl contenders. And I do think most people have them in that category, but I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to be as rosy as everything looks and should be with getting this, Hall of Fame quarterback in, getting rid of Zach Wilson, not getting rid of, but, demoting him to backup. So we'll kind of see. I'm very excited and just like interested to see how it all plays out here.
Yeah, dude. So Conan, you had some very interesting nuggets there. Let's start off with Aaron Rodgers coming in. We know he didn't have the greatest year last year. He was obviously dealing with the injuries, and he had arguably the worst supporting cast of receivers around him. This year, it's a complete different story. He's got a little bit of an upgrade. He's got Garrett Wilson going to a new offensive system, even though he's very familiar with Nathaniel Hackett. What's kind of your outlook for him fantasy-wise? And do you think that he can kind of outperform that ADP that he's going at, which is around QB 14?
Yeah, so, I think no matter who is looking, what we're looking at, we see Zach Wilson last year. We now see QB1 is Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a big upgrade, right? But I just, I'm a numbers, I'm a stats kind of guy. So I wanted to dig in a little bit. So I have a couple things, comparing Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. I just think, like I'm saying, it is a huge upgrade. I'm not denying that, but a couple things, right? Just a couple things. So four stats in particular, right? So catchable pass rate last year, Zach Wilson ranked number 49. He wasn't great. I'm not that surprised. So, we're bringing in Aaron Rodgers. You'd think, he had a bad year, not great, but we still think he's in that 20s or something. No, he was actually number 47, 2 spots higher than Zach Wilson in that catchable pass rate, which is, a little mind blowing. I know he had a bad year, but I didn't think it was, 2 backup quarterback slots ahead of Zach Wilson. Like, I thought there was a bigger difference, and so kind of keeping on with the catchable pass. So the deep ball catchable pass rate, right? Zach Wilson, number 25. Actually not bad. Not bad, right? So I'm
bottom
like,
third of the league, but it's all right. It's still respectable.
It's still starting quarterback number. Yeah. There's 32 of them, right? So number 25, I was like, okay, let's look at Aaron Rodgers. Deep ball, I think he connected on a couple with Christian Watson. Maybe there's some growing pains, but, he must have been, in the teens? He was actually number 29. He was actually 4 spots lower than Zach Wilson in the deep ball catchable pass rate. So things that I'm just like, these are obviously stats I'm nitpicking, but to be behind Zach Wilson in any stat as Aaron Rodgers as future Hall of Fame, and it scares me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. And so two more quick ones. Completion percentage versus man coverage. Zach Wilson 54.1%. That was 27th in the league. We're hoping Aaron Rodgers bumps that up a lot. He was actually at 54.2%, which is 1.1% higher, 1 slot higher. And then the last one, I think this one especially, I think, Aaron Rodgers as a fantasy quarterback has been great for years and years and years. Yeah. So I wanted to look at fantasy points per drop back. So every time he drops back, how many fantasy points is he getting? Zach Wilson, 0.4, 25th in the league. Again, kind of basically where I thought, the higher end of what I thought he would be at. So I was, Aaron Rodgers must be a lot higher. He's obviously a lot better. He was at 0.44. So number 23 in the league. So only 2 spots. So again, I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be not even, Zach Wilson level. I'm not saying that at all. These are stats I specifically went in and looked and picked out because I thought it'd be funny. And at the same time, it's just like, these are just a couple things that are interesting and a little bit alarming to me, where I'm just like some of these things, like it's, he's supposed to have a much more catchable ball. Like, Garrett Wilson had one of the worst catchable pass rates in the league.
That was the one that threw me for a loop.
Right. And even the deep ball, though, it's like he had Christian Watson. I know it took a little while, but, he's always connected on a little bit. And it's just so some of these things. And so now I'll go to a fantasy perspective. I mean, I think around the mid QB2 where he's kind of ranked right now. Maybe that's a little bit lower than consensus, but I do think that's kind of that is where I have him ranked, right in that mid QB2 range. But I mean, if we're talking upside, it should be definitely in the quarterback 1 range. That back end, I don't think we really see Aaron Rodgers beating out the likes of some of the top names. You know, he's not going to outscore Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes. I think that's a little bit far fetched. But
even Justin Herbert and those
yeah,
kind of
even
guys.
the next couple guys in the next tier. But I mean, back end quarterback 1 with this team with Garrett Wilson as a weapon, and it's just like that's basically where he's finished above virtually every season he's played, and not gotten hurt or had some other issue. And so, I mean, I think the upside is definitely there where you can feel, certainly comfortable rolling him out as your QB2 or super flex. Like I think, in years past, he was your QB1 on a super flex team, but these days he's your QB2 / super flex. And I think he definitely has a chance to really blow that away considering what his track record is. And hopefully we're looking at last year as a little bit of an anomaly rather than what's to come.
Yeah, no, that was a lot there to digest, but it was very, informative. And I think there were a lot of things in there that, I'm going to have to go back, look at, kind of maybe adjust my rankings on what I think of Aaron Rodgers this season. And you were talking a little bit about Garrett Wilson. Now he did look like, a future superstar in the league, kind of maybe in that, next wave of superstar wide receivers coming through the NFL. Some of these guys age out. Now that Aaron Rodgers is there, hopefully that, catchable ball rate increases to what Aaron Rodgers is known for. What's his upside this season? How high do you think he can get?
I mean, we got upside for days. I think the upside is the wide receiver 1 where we've seen Devontae Adams finish with Aaron Rodgers before, along with, he's finished wide receiver 1, 2, 3, he's bona fide stud. We know that, but I think we looked at Garrett Wilson last year, what he did in college. Like, I think we know he's a stud as well. And he's now got that same quarterback that enabled Devontae Adams to these top finishes. So, I mean, we're looking at upside. I think it's the wide receiver 1, even ahead of, the likes of Chase and Jefferson. Like, I think that's the type of upside we're looking at.
I love that. And I 100% agree with you because he is, he's a lot of people's breakout star that like candidate this year. I think it's, he's the darling of the fantasy football world right now. And I think it's deservedly so. Now, out of curiosity, where do you have him ranked in your projections?
Yeah, so I mean, I know I said the upside's wide receiver 1. I definitely don't have it ranked that way. But I'm kind of flipping back and forth. So I have him like wide receiver 9, 10. I keep flipping him and Amon-Ra St. Brown, just like back and forth, one above the other. This week is a Garrett Wilson week, so he's at 9 and Amon-Ra is at 10. Next week, who knows? It might be ARSB up again. But
I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's a good range, and I think overall too, like kind of the 2-3 turn, I think is a great spot for him. If I can get him, early 3rd round after the turn, I'll be very happy. But even if I get him back end of the 2nd, that's also okay. I think it's just, as always, just depends on who else is already off the board. But I think in general around that bottom of the wide receiver 1 range and 2-3 turn, I think that's a good spot for him.
I love that. I'm completely with you on that. Now let's look at some of these other pass catching options because obviously Garrett Wilson is going to be that number 1 focal point in this offense, but there are a lot of other names there. I'm going to throw these guys at you with their current ADP. I want you to let me know who you prefer at cost, right? So we have Allen Lazard going at 140 or 114 overall. That's wide receiver 53. McCole Hardman is 201, wide receiver 85. Corey Davis, 213, wide receiver 92. Are you in on any of these 3, and who do you prefer at that ADP?
I mean, I don't know about but I think at like wide receiver 5 or 6 costs, I'll take Lazard kind of at that ADP. I think you guys know my love for Lazard. We're basically a year removed from me coming onto your guys' pod for bold predictions and wrongfully claiming he would command 100+ targets with a chance at double-digit touchdowns. But he was on his way to making both of my Dad Bod predictions come true. Because if you look at the last 7 games, or the first 7 games of 2022, he actually had 51 targets, 5 touchdowns. So he was on pace. He was halfway there through 7 games, and then he really fizzled out. Whether it was Christian Watson's ascendance, that's okay, but almost 2 for 2 on my Dad Bod polled predictions. Which the other one, I think we talked about it a little, but that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle top 12. Like I called it last year. They weren't being drafted as such last year, but I said, they're going to get 50+% of those targets. And so I was right on that one. I went 1 for 2. I was close.
Hey, I'll be 100% honest with you. After that conversation, you were the reason I went out and got Jalen Waddle, and it paid off handsomely. It got me into the playoffs, through the playoffs, and he was a stud like you projected. And we will get into some, hopefully, later round sleepers that we'll talk about that you can pump up this year. But continuing with these pass catching options, we know that Aaron Rodgers has made some of these tight ends pretty relevant. Robert Tonyan a few years ago. We know he likes to kind of go that way. Do you have any excitement for Tyler Conklin or any of these tight ends in this offense?
I mean, for this year, I'm not that excited for the tight end position there. I mean, we're looking at the best tight end seasons that Rodgers put up was, 2011 Jermichael Finley with 55 for 767 and 8. And then that big Bob Tonyan season you were just talking about, where he didn't even crack 600 yards, but he had 11 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
big Bob Tonyan. I love that.
I mean, to me, I think it's just pretty clear that if Conklin is going to be even sniffing that tight end 1 range, he needs like 6, 7, 8+ touchdowns. Yeah. If he gets there, which I think in that offense it is possible, but I think I'm just gonna stay clear.
Bank. Yeah, it's hard to bank on that.
If anything, it's like I might look at Jeremy Ruckert and give him a chance in a dynasty sense. Like that's something, I know I dropped him from a couple of dynasty teams. I was like, I got to make room. This guy didn't do anything, but you got to remember tight ends, they do come on slow. He's looking like he's apparently
a lot of buzz.
Exactly. He's catching some eyes in camp right now. So we'll kind of see about that one.
I like that call. Let's pivot a little bit to this backfield. We know how good Breece Hall was in the amount of time that he was on the field. He's coming off that ACL injury. Drafters are still somewhat excited about the Breece Hall upside. He's going at RB11, 33 overall at ADP. Are you worried about that ACL, and are you willing to, spend up at that cost?
Yeah, I mean, I love the talent of Breece, but at that cost, I am definitely out. I think RB11 is just a little bit too rich for me. I don't think the team will rush him back that early or like overwork him right off the bat when he's such a key piece of that offense and just like a foundational guy moving forward. And I think at that range, we're looking at guys like Mixon, Stevenson, Najee, Etienne, just other guys that I just feel a little more safe about, not coming off major injuries, like know they're going to get most of the volume in their offenses. And so I just prefer to stay away. If he slips and he's, wide running back 15, 16, 17, like back end of the RB2 range, okay, I'll take that shot. I'll take that shot any day. But going ahead of some of these guys that we know for sure, it's tough for me.
Yeah, I get that. And the stats coming from a year off an ACL aren't positive. We know what happened with Saquon. We know what happened with a lot of these guys. So I'm kind of with you. It's making me hesitant. I still love Breece Hall, but it's a risky bet for that ADP. And now we're coming off the weekend. We're recording this on a Tuesday. We're coming off a weekend where Dalvin Cook was in New York all weekend. He was talking to this team. There's a lot of smoke right now about Dalvin Cook possibly signing with the Jets. Now, if this happens, what are your expectations, I guess, for Dalvin Cook? And what does this do to Breece Hall?
I mean, first of all, I don't like, there's a lot of smoke about Dalvin Cook, and it just makes me feel icky. Like it supports that thought that he's not that Breece Hall is not quite 100%, that they do want someone else to come in there, take the brunt of the work kind of while he's still working his way back.
He's on the pup. Yeah, he's on the pup list still.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's very much a possibility in my mind that he could still end up there. I know it's taken a little while, but I mean, I don't know how it's going to break down. Like, I think Cook will definitely start the season as kind of their true RB1. And who knows if Brees is actually even like ready to participate and kind of get in there. But I think, if he does come back by the end of the year, I do think Brees will kind of be pushing him. I don't think Dalvin is going to have that backfield to himself, and Brees has nothing to say about it, even when he's feeling a little bit healthier. But I mean, I think all of what you said about that, the ACL injury and coming back the next year, like, I think I'll be completely in on him next year.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
I think 2 years removed, I think that we have a lot of data where, they're finally getting back. Their explosiveness is there. But this year, I'm just a little worried about that backfield.
Yeah, man. I love what you said there. I think if Dalvin does go there, it'll be really interesting to see what happens to both of their ADPs and how everything shifts around in the RB kind of, pecking order. Dalvin's an interesting play if he goes to the Jets. I'll say that. I'd be pretty interested, because even if Brees is there, I think Dalvin would still get his work. Like, he has earned that. And like you said, if they bring in Dalvin, that tells me they're not sold on Brees, like, being healthy for this season. And it would definitely make me very concerned about his outlook for this year. Now let's move on to something that I think you're kind of interested in. Are there any other players on this team that you have, give me some sleepers on this team that you want us to keep an eye on?
Yeah. So, hear me out. Aaron Rodgers, he comes in for a few games, he fizzles out, and Zach Wilson is our... No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that.
Holy.
No. I'm not going there. But no, I think for real though, in redraft, I have really no interest in anyone besides like Rodgers, Wilson, Brees, even at cost again. But in a dynasty sense, I mean, I did throw out Rucker. I think that's a name to keep an eye out for. But I think there's one that, who knows if you or you listening have even ever heard of him, but it's wide receiver Jason Brownlee. So it's a wide receiver you may not have heard of, but he's from Southern Miss. He led his team 3 straight years. Every year he improved. And right now at camp, he's generating a lot of buzz. He's caught a couple crazy one-handed plays, just flashing off the tape. And so, he's got NFL size. He's 6'2", he's 200 pounds. He's great at contested catches. He's got, a large wingspan. He's got big hands, but he's not a speed demon, for being nearly 20 yards a catch guy throughout college. Like, he's not the fastest guy. He's, barely 4'5", 4'6", 40 speed. But I'm telling you, go watch some of his plays from college. The upside is there. I'm sure of it. He is popping off the page. His route running gets him in trouble at times. I'm not going to deny that. He kind of gets confused sometimes. It's not the sharpest, but in some of those situations, it calls for a contested catch, and who knows? Would you look at that? He's actually really good at that and pops off. So, I mean, I think he's making some noise. I think behind, like we obviously discussed, behind Garrett Wilson, it's just a whole lot of bleh, like we don't really know. Yeah. And so I think it's just a name to keep an eye on. I think a lot of people have probably never heard of him, but he's someone that is making waves at camp. I think even Rodgers has said something, or has made a couple of great plays with him in training camp. So just someone to keep an eye out on.
I like that. Jason Brownlee. So when he pops off this season, you heard it here from Conan, because he will hit. And then one final question I ask everyone that we're doing this with: who are your plant the flag players this year? Just like your Jalen Waddle last year, who are the guys you're going out and getting in every draft?
Yeah, I mean, I got two quick ones then. So yeah, I think all off season long we've heard the drum beat for Deontay Johnson that he's too low, and he has since moved up. I don't know where he started, but he's at least in somewhere in the top 36-ish receivers, somewhere from the 30 to 40 range.
Yeah, he's 33.
Yeah, so still outside of the top 30. So, last year obviously was a crazy season. He had the 6th most targets overall. He actually had I don't know if you knew this, he had the 10th most red zone targets in the entire league. And how many touchdowns did that lead to?
Goose egg.
0 touchdowns.
Big old goose egg.
So, and he almost had as many unrealized air yards as actual receiving air yards or receiving yards. And so I think a couple things went into it. Obviously, so that the target accuracy going from Big Ben, dump down, small check down guy, the target accuracy went down. Obviously, Kenny Pickett only had 7 passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
If the pie is that small, it's tough to get that many. And he had 40 interceptable passes. That was second most per player profiler. And then another place where he was just really bad was his red zone completion percentage, of course, was 28th in the league at just barely over 40%. But I think kind of looking for this year, I think there's a couple things where he flashed a couple good signs where he was 6th in pressured completion percentage. He was 9th in deep ball completion percentage. Some of these numbers tell us, okay, we have some things to look forward to. I mean, I think year 2 with Kenny Pickett, better offensive line, couple other offensive weapons to worry about. I think, if we look at last year's line, if we give him the exact same number of catches and yards, but we just give him, 6 touchdowns. And so far in his career, he's had 8, 7, and 5. So that would be on the lower end of what he's got. That would have had him at wide receiver 20, just with exactly the line he had last year. So I think it can't go understated how much those touchdowns hurt him. Just catching a couple would have at least almost put him in the wide receiver 2 range. So that's someone I know I've been trying to get as much of as I can. I think people are really low on him. They see last year, they say, oh, that's the new Deontay Johnson. It's Kenny Pickett's fall, whatever it is. So I think that's someone that you can definitely get for cheap too. And he's still not too old or anything. Like I still expect him to be the target hog in that team. And I mean, he's definitely one of my guys.
I love that call. Anyone else?
Real quick? So then, my last one we'll end it with is tight end Greg Dulcich. So he's currently outside of the top 12 to 15-ish tight ends. But if you remember last year, he took a little while. He was hurt, actually, I believe, to begin the year. He took a couple games to actually get going. And then he played 10 games, missed the last couple. So he played 10 games as a rookie. He had 411 yards, which doesn't seem like much. But, if we give that a 16-game pace, we'll even give him 1 game off for an injury, right? 16-game pace. That was 657 yards. That would have been the most by any rookie tight end in the last 20 years behind Pitts and Ingram. That's it.
Yeah.
So he was on pace to be, have the 3rd most rookie yards out of any tight end in the last 20 years. And then, I think a couple things I really liked when I looked at just his metrics and just his stats from last year, like he was able to draw targets at a high level, like immediately. He had games with 8 targets. There's one name, I thought it was funny, one name above him, Cole Kmet. He just got paid, right? He just got paid like the best running back in the league. And
yes, he did.
And so in just 10 games in his rookie season, Greg Dulcich actually tied Kmet's career total games with 8+ targets. Kmet in 3-4 years has had 4 games with 8+ targets. Dulcich had 4 games in his 10 games just last year. And so, I mean, that's earning targets is something. Like you don't just get targets, you have to earn them, right? And that goes, usually we're talking about wide receivers, but it goes for tight ends. You don't just walk into it. They had other weapons in that offense that they chose to throw to Dulcich instead. And then so the last part of it is just, I think he just plays that big slot role, right? It's just a fantasy friendly role for tight ends. So he only played 10 games last year. He had the 6th most slot snaps among tight ends. Like that's really good. And then a couple other numbers is he had the 3rd most deep targets among tight ends, the 3rd highest ADOT in 10 games, 7th in target separation, 7th in most unrealized air yards. These are all just in 10 games that he did with a really, really bad Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And we expect him to be a lot better this year. Even if he's a little bit better, I think he loved Dulcich. As soon as he came on, he had an eye for him. And sure, there were a couple games where he only had 2-3 targets, but I think we can chalk that up as, holy crap, the Broncos were horrible. They could not score. I think I'm okay with it. I saw enough. So he's someone that, once we get outside some of those big stud tight ends that we all know and love, once those guys are off the board, I'd rather just wait on some of the middling guys and just take guy like Greg Dulcich at the end,
Yeah, I love that. He's rising up my rankings quickly, especially with this KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick news of the injuries. They're going to be sidelined. Patrick's completely out. Hamler, we don't know if he's going to be out the rest of the season, but seems like it's going that way. Yeah, he should demand even more targets than he was going to at the beginning of off season. Like, now that those two are out, I can see Dulcich. He's got a clear path to being that number 2 option in this offense alongside Jerry Jeudy. Conan, man, this was a pleasure. Like I said, you are easily one of my favorite Twitter accounts for football and just in general. Like, I love your stuff, your content and everything you're putting out. Now, before we go, let the people know where they can find you again, and if you have anything fun coming out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that again. Love coming on, talking with you guys. And, after nailing some of those bold predictions last year, I knew I had to come back. And so, you can find me on Twitter at @1stat1day with the number 1 and then stat number 1 day. And, mostly find everything I do over there. I just rip a lot of trivia and stats and things that aren't maybe that actionable for fantasy, but just really fun to look at. Just not the names that you'd ever think would be the answers to some of these questions. And then, every once in a while, you catch me co-hosting with my boy Tyler FF Creator on YouTube and stuff like that. So catch me over there if you like. But again, thank you so much for having me, and had a great time.
No, thank you, dude. And we're going to have you on again for one of the regular episodes. And you are the man, Conan. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you for watching our episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
If you aren't already following us on Twitter, check us out at DadBodFS.
We'll be posting all of our best clips and videos to all of our social media: TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on there at Dad Bod Fantasy Squad.
Lastly, if you'd rather just listen, we make sure we post our audio of each episode on all the major streaming platforms. Stick with us all season long so together we can count our trophies and not our calories.